Can't lie, I'm really kind of struggling at this new job, struggling to find my space, struggling to find my voice. I think I'm ready to call it. I'm ready to call Pennsylvania right now. Okay, you're ready to call Pennsylvania. That has huge implications on this election. Go ahead. I think the Philadelphia 76ers are cooked. I don't know, man. It's just Embiid hasn't played a game yet, and now he's suspended. There's all that drama going on. Paul George just came back. The last minute of that game was weird. Him and Maxey going back. I'm ready to call it. I don't like the vibes at all. I don't know. I sort of thought they brought me in here to sort of bridge the gap between sports and politics, right? The intersectionality of those two. Everybody loves politics in their sports and vice versa. And I thought that's what they brought me in here to do, but maybe I'm wrong. The man is a tyrant. The last 4 years prove that. Do we really need to see anything else? He's incapable of taking blame. He's incapable of looking in the mirror. He's quick to blame everybody but himself. And just to be quite honest with you, I think he's inept. I don't think he's capable of handling this job. And I think we as people deserve more. Do we really need to see any more of this? It's time that we stood up and put an end to this once and for all, honestly. Okay, scathing words by Slightly Biased about former President Donald Trump. That's honestly the best work you've done since you've gotten here. Yep, that's who I was talking about. Get that off the screen. Get that off the screen. We will be back to election coverage after these quick words from Raytheon.
Folks, it's time to talk about disappointments. And no, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about NBA teams, NBA contenders that we entered the season thinking this team might win a championship or this team might have a deep playoff run in them. Teams that have gotten off to slow starts and whether or not we should be concerned about them. Okay, I'm going to be ranking some of these teams on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the ultimate panic meter, 10 being something has gone tremendously wrong and this team is doomed, 1 being who cares? It's 8 games, 9 games into the season. Let's let these things play out. And before we even get started, I know what you're thinking. Why the hell are the Dallas Mavericks on this thumbnail? Look, it's called clickbait. Okay, a little insider information. It's called clickbait. I was going to do this video a couple of days ago where the Mavericks just had an embarrassing home loss to the Indiana Pacers and started the season 4-3. But then something pretty big happened in the United States, and I didn't feel like it was right for an NBA video. I'm, of course, talking about the Dallas Cowboys trading a 4th-round pick for Jonathan Mingo. And so I decided, you know what, let's push this back a little bit. The Mavericks just won last night. They're 5-3. So it feels a little bit goofy including them, but I was already going to put them in. I might as well just keep it going. After beating the Bulls last night, as of the time I'm recording this, the Mavs are 5-3 to start the season. What would have been deemed disappointing if we were to look at the Mavericks before last night's game would have been Luka's slow start to the season, right? And the Mavericks as a team not really clicking as much offensively as we might have expected. I thought this team could have finished first in offensive rating this year, and I guess it's still possible over time, but it kind of feels like they're going to miss that mark this season. Luka had one of the worst 4-game stretches of his career to start this season. He's really sort of struggled out of the gate of games so far in the first quarter. That's something that he's always been dominant at. He's led the league in first quarter scoring 4 of the last 5 seasons. He's really struggled out of the gate in that regard, and I think that's a big reason why the Mavs as an offense has struggled. So I'm putting my concern meter with the Mavericks at a 1. I only included them in here because I was already going to do it, and now it makes even less sense after they got a win last night. So, yeah, they're a 1. I'm not concerned about them at all. They have the 3rd best defense in the NBA right now, and the offense will continue to click. This is going to be a good basketball team. I am a little bit worried that PJ Washington and Derek Lively seem to have, real legitimate injuries. Derek Lively's about to miss his 3rd straight game. PJ Washington is 2nd. That concerns me. But as long as those guys are back, this will be a good basketball team. I was also going to include the Denver Nuggets, but now they're 5-3. They're 4-1 since they lost their first 2 games of the season. So I feel like it would be stupid to include them in this as well. That just goes to show how fucking stupid of an idea this video is, but I'm already committed to it, so I'm doing it anyways. Christian Brown has looked great so far in the starting 5. He's looked tremendous. He fits in like a glove defensively. He's a great playmaker. He's incredibly athletic. He's an incredibly smart defender, a really good team defender, as well as a good individual on-ball defender as well. He sort of fits in that KCP role pretty great defensively. And offensively, he's a crafty finisher, finishes above the rim. If he's knocking down threes, he's a perfect fit for this starting 5. So even when they were losing games, Christian Brown's performance was very encouraging for this Nuggets team. And now they're starting to get, great performances and contributions from Russell Westbrook. Julian Strawther has moments from time to time. Hunter Tyson looks like a player who can help out tremendously, defensively at least, off the bench. So they're figuring some stuff out. They're 5-3. They're not a disappointment. I'll put them at a 1. I just want to talk about those teams because I was originally going to include them, but now it feels stupid. Let's get into the actual disappointments. Let's really dive into these teams, starting with the New York Knicks, who are 3-4 to start this season. I figured the Knicks would be a little bit slow out of the gates. Not only did they shape up their roster quite a bit in the offseason, but they went out and traded for Karl Anthony Towns days before training camp started. So we knew that this would be sort of slow out of the gates, and we're starting to see that play out, really. You look at the numbers, and offensively, this team looks really good. They're 3rd in offensive rating. But you dive a little bit deeper, and I think their offense still has quite a few things that they need to figure out. That becomes incredibly apparent whenever you look at like the fourth quarter numbers for this Knicks team, where they are a bottom 5 offense when the game slows down and you really need buckets. That's when you start to see the flaws of this offense come to the forefront. And really what it looks like, just from an outsider's perspective, is a group of guys that are still learning how to play together. Lead ball handler in Jalen Brunson, who has never really been like a great playmaker. That's never been something that is really in his bag. And I'm talking playmaker for others. Obviously, he's a great shot creator for himself, but creating for others has never been something Brunson's necessarily great at. And there are most certainly times down the stretch of games so far this season where Brunson gets tunnel vision and you just need him to create more for others. Or beyond that, just trust his teammates more. Brunson's like mid 30% from the field in the fourth quarter of games. Those things will iron themselves out. Like, I'm not worried about that. Brunson will get going and his shot will start to fall and it'll look 10 times better. But right now, it's figuring out ways to not go entire fourth quarter stretches where Mikal Bridges is popping off for the first 3 quarters and then he takes 2 shots in the fourth. Or Karl-Anthony Towns is popping off and he only gets the ball 3 times in the fourth quarter in the final 3-4 minutes of a game. Those are the things that they need to iron out and fix offensively. And I think they will. Karl-Anthony Towns, numbers-wise, he's put up some big games so far this season, 30-point games. Games where you're like, okay, that's the Karl-Anthony Towns that we traded for. But he also needs a bit of an adjustment period as well. You can sort of tell watching that Cat, it's been a while since he's really played the 5, and been the 5 on the court. And you could tell, his screens are terrible. He's not setting screens with the intention of opening up the offense, and the screen being an action that leads to other actions for the offense, making your life easier for the ball handler. He's setting screens as in hey, I'm coming up and I want the ball. I'm going to slip this screen. I don't want to set it. Pass me the ball. I want this switch. I want to pop out for 3, whatever the case may be. These are things that he's going to have to learn. These are habits that he's going to have to break. And I just think we need to give it some time. Mikal's looked good offensively for this Knicks team. And I think there are stretches where he might need the ball in his hands a little bit more. Again, these are all things that they're going to have to iron out. But the thing I am concerned about, and the reason I'm going to give them a 4, I'll give them a 4 on the panic meter, is their defense looks terrible right now. And a big reason for that is Cat. A big reason for that is Karl-Anthony Towns being the backline defender. And it's not a role that's best suited for Karl-Anthony Towns. I don't think it's a role best suited for this Knicks team, having a guy like Cat being your rim protector and being in this drop coverage all of the time. And Cat can get picked apart sometimes defensively, but I don't want to put all of the blame on him because OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, the 2 wing stoppers that are supposed to just kind of cancel out the fact that Karl-Anthony Towns is your backline defender, have not been great to start this season defensively. Mikal really specifically, but even OG kind of looks a step slow. I mean, they have their moments, don't get me wrong, but you sort of expect a little bit more out of these guys. And I don't know how much of that is, again, this is a completely new team. Whenever we talk about new teams coming together, we always think about the offense, but defensively, these guys need to learn how to play within the system. These guys need to learn how to play off one another. These guys need to learn each other's tendencies defensively, and that stuff takes time as well. So I think these things will start to click and gel, but as easy as it is to shit on Cat and blame Cat, Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby need to be better as well. That goes without saying, really. And obviously, they are missing Mitchell Robinson, and his return, later in the season will help them out tremendously. Even a guy like Precious Achiuwa coming back would really help out this team, and they can sort of experiment with lineups where Cat is back to playing the 4 and Precious is the 5, and it kind of makes a little bit more sense in that regard. I don't know how often they would do that, but it makes some sense. But I'm putting my panic meter at a 4, a little concerning. We went into the season thinking this was going to be the second best team in the East, and I'm just not so sure of that anymore, but I think that they'll figure some stuff out. Let's get into the teams that are genuinely pretty concerning. I was thinking about putting the Magic in here, but it just kind of feels unfair to them. I have high expectations for this Orlando Magic team, but Paolo's injury is just brutal, and offensively, they are lost. They look like lost puppies without Paolo Banchero, and they have yet to win a game without him. It's going to be tough sledding over the next couple of weeks. Obviously, I'm concerned about them, but it doesn't even feel fair to put them in here. Now, saying that, you might think that it's unfair then to put the Philadelphia 76ers in here, who are also dealing with just a slew of different injuries, but the Sixers are 1-6. There was a stat floating around last night that since 1970, 150 NBA teams have started 1-6 or worse, and only 12 of those teams made the postseason. Now, I don't usually like stats like these because typically teams that start 1-6 are terrible. So, of course, they're not going to make the playoffs. But this is a little bit different for the 76ers and another team we'll be talking about here in a second who's also 1-6 to start the season. But I'm putting the 76ers at a full-fledged 10. I am terrified. I am terrified for this team. I am horrified for them. Let's just start here by saying what doesn't even need to be said. It's really difficult to gauge this team without seeing their big three playing together. Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, Joel Embiid. We're 7 games into the season. We have yet to see that. Paul George made his debut a few nights ago. He's played 2 games. Immediately, game 1 of the season that he played against the Phoenix Suns, the end of the game was so wonky with him and Tyrese Maxey trying to figure out who was going to have the ball in clutch situations, and it ended up leading to a Philadelphia 76ers loss, and then they got blown out by the Clippers. And oh my God, wouldn't you know it, Tyrese Maxey is going to be out for the next few weeks with a hamstring injury. I mean, when it rains, it fucking pours. Joel Embiid is yet to play. He's gotten suspended before he's been on the court. 3-game suspension before he got onto the court, but he is still yet to play any game. And we're 8 games into the season now. You know, like you don't want to dig yourself too deep of a hole. Now, fortunately, you're playing in the shit Eastern Conference where the Indiana Pacers, who are 4-4, are currently the 3 seed. So you do have that going for you, but you really need to pick it up. And if we're just assuming that Joel Embiid plays 40 or 50 games this season, you have to be dominant in the games in which he is on the court. You can't be dropping games that you shouldn't be dropping. Otherwise, you're probably going to find yourself in the play-in, which maybe the Sixers team is fine with, but that's a scary, scary, scary thing. I was going to say, let's be patient. Let's give it some time before we jump ship on the 76ers. But with Tyrese Maxey now missing time, it's hard not to be concerned. It's really difficult. Another Eastern Conference contending team that finds himself 1-6 to start the season. The Milwaukee Bucks. At least with the 76ers, you could say, well, Embiid hasn't played. Paul George just came back. Yes, their injuries are very alarming and concerning, but they at least have that injury excuse. The Bucks, Chris Middleton hasn't played so far this season. Okay, he's somebody that you can't really rely on to play games anyways. Giannis has missed a couple of games. Okay, but by and large, they're healthy enough to not be 1-6. I put the Philadelphia 76ers out of 10 because of their injuries, and it just feels like when you get off to a start this badly, it's really hard to dig yourself out of. I think I also have to go around a 10 for the Milwaukee Bucks as well. I don't want to be this reactionary, but when you're 1-6, 1-6 is a different thing entirely. Here are the problems with this Bucks team and why I'm so concerned. They look old as shit. What are the trademarks of an old team? A team that just lacks athleticism, a team that also just kind of is lacking in the effort department at time. How terrible you are in transition, especially defensively. And this transition defense for the Bucks is abysmal. It is completely and totally awful, in a lot of ways, completely and totally unacceptable from a team that is trying to contend and compete at the highest level. Some of it has to do with the geezers that they have on the team. Damian Lillard is old. Brook Lopez is a grandpa, and he looks like he has concrete shoes on. That's how fucking slow he is, right? Even Giannis sometimes lacks in the effort department, believe it or not, defensively. And all of these things are apparent and obvious, but then you also have things that are concerning, like, one, is Chris Middleton this important to your team? If so, that's concerning and alarming because he does not play a lot of basketball games at this point in his career. It also doesn't help that Gary Trent Jr. has just been abysmal to start this season. I mean, this was a free agent signing in the offseason that we were raving about. How did the Milwaukee Bucks manage to get Gary Trent Jr. for nothing? We were all just shocked by it. He's been dreadful. I mean, so bad that he has now been benched. They're starting Andre Jackson Jr., who I like Action Jackson. I think he can be a good player in this league, and I like the energy that he brings, and that energy might do a lot for this Bucks team in their starting 5. But Gary Trent Jr. was supposed to be this guy who last year he knocked down threes, wide open threes, at a 50% clip. He's somebody who people think is a good defender. Anyone who's watched him knows that he's not that great of a defender, but he can be a defensive playmaker, and he's got to be better than Malik Beasley, right? Like that was the bar. That was the bar that was set, and that has not been the case. And the Bobby Portis fit has now become weird and wonky. Bobby Portis is a legend in Milwaukee. He was so important for them during that finals run that they had. It can just be difficult to watch him at times. He's a ball stopper offensively. Any offensive possession that ends with Bobby Portis doing something just feels bad at this point, and defensively he is horrendous. And he's a big part of why their defense is as bad as it is. Will they turn it around? Obviously. Chris Middleton will come back. That'll help. They're not 1-6 bad. They'll claw their way back in. They'll be probably a top 5 seed, if I had to guess, by the end of the season. But it's concerning because I don't know what the ceiling of this team is anymore. And if the ceiling isn't a championship, Giannis has been pretty vocal about what that means for him. But let's finish by talking about this team right here. This one pains me a little tiny bit. Every year we talk about this team, what their ceiling might be, how good they could be. They currently have the 4th worst net rating in the NBA through their first 9 games. They're 3-6. That is the New Orleans Pelicans. Why do I want to talk about them? Well, I want to give some context as to why they've had this sluggish of a start and why my concern meter is a 10 for them. And I'll just say right now, my concern meter is a 10 for them right now because I think that they've built their stadium on an ancient burial ground. There's some type of curse that has plagued not only this basketball team, but maybe this city as a whole when it comes to sports, because the New Orleans Saints started the season 2-0 and they lost 6 straight games. They look terrible. And I think that has rubbed off on the Pelicans, unfortunately. Looking at their injury report right now, it's just insane. I mean, they have a legit rotation on their injury report. Trey Murphy has yet to play in a game so far this season, although it does sound like he will be back soon. Herb Jones has played in 3 of the Pelicans' 9 games. He's out for a couple of weeks with a shoulder injury. Zion Williamson has played in 6 of the 9 Pelicans games. DeJounte Murray played 30 minutes. 30 minutes on opening night, fractured his hand, injured. CJ McCollum played in 3 games, got an adductor injury. He's out for 3 to 4 weeks. They have played the Portland Trailblazers 3 times so far this season. Why the hell is that a thing? I don't know. But they played them 3 times so far this season. They've lost twice. In that second loss, Brandon Boston Jr. got 37 minutes of game time. Started and played 37 minutes. Jeremiah Robinson Earl played 33 minutes. Jalen Noel. Yeah, Jalen Noel is back in the NBA. Picked up off the street 23 minutes off the bench. It's hard not to feel bad for this Pelicans team. You know, they're a team that wanted to be in the playoff picture. They're a team that wanted to have a deep playoff run. They've yet to be healthy at all this season. They made a pretty sizable trade in the offseason going for DeJounte Murray. So they want to be competitive. And so far, that has not been the case. They're 3-6 in what is a gauntlet Western Conference. You need all the wins that you can get by the end of the season. And a stretch this bad, injury-wise, is just, it sucks. It really, really sucks. And it's unfortunate for them, but I am concerned. I'm giving them a 10 only because they are clearly under some type of spell, under some type of curse. New Orleans is, you know, if you go there, it's very superstitious. So something's off. They need a cleanse. Something's not right there. Something's not adding